Hello all, welcome back to the next one. In this one, we'll see how we can run test parallelly using TestNG. So what I have here is one class which is TestNG underscore test parallel 1, and then another class called TestNG underscore test parallel 2. That's about it. What I have here is two methods inside this one, test method 1 and test method 2. I'm printing one statement here. This is coming from TestNG test parallel 1, test method 1. Then I'm sleeping for 6 seconds, about 6 seconds. And then I'm just printing more steps in this method. So basically, obviously, let's say the method takes about 6 seconds to run. You might have a lot of steps and it might take about 6 seconds or maybe even less or more. But we are just taking 6 seconds for right now. Same thing for test method 2, and we have the same thing in the test parallel 2 class as well. So we have two classes and all done and set. Now let's take a look at the XML file. So I created one testng parallel.xml file here, and I named it as parallel test suite, and I actually created two different tests inside it. So this one is test 1 and this runs parallel 1 class, and this test is test 2 and it runs TestNG underscore parallel 2 class. So we have both the classes running in different tests inside the same suite, right? That's about it. So now let me just try to run this one and let's see what happens. So run as TestNG suite, bring it up. So it runs and it's going to take about 6 seconds. Then it's going to run test 2 and then about 6 seconds. Then it's gonna run test 1 from parallel 2 class, right, from here. And then again it's waiting for 6 seconds always, right, because TestNG execution is sequential. If we have multiple classes, multiple methods, everything is running sequentially. First method will complete, then second method will start, and then so on and so forth, right? So it ran 4 tests, everything is fine, we can see here, and everything is all good. Now let's see, what if I want to run these methods parallelly? I don't want to wait till first method is complete for the second method. And this is effective when you have methods not dependent on each other, because if you have dependent methods and things really want the first method to complete before second method should run, then you should not do these kind of things. But if you have like everything independent and you want to run these kind of things, or maybe there could be different configurations where you want to run test parallel 1 and test parallel 2. So let's assume that you are running this class here also and you are running this class here also, but both these tests are different configurations. Then also you might want to run these test cases in parallel, but you will know based on your application these things. So let's take a look how we can run them in parallel. So for the suite, we have an attribute called parallel. So I'm gonna type PARA control space parallel. It gives me these options. So by default it's none, and then I am gonna delete this one and then hit control space. It gives me all the options. So we can run classes in parallel, false is none, instances, methods or none, or we can run test in parallel. So test are these tags. We can run test in parallel and true. So basically mostly used ones are either we can run classes in parallel or methods and test. So these three are mostly used. So right now I'm going to take an example of test. So parallel test. This one will help us running these tests in parallel. Another attribute that we can add here is thread count. So thread count is something, it's 5 by default, but we can do anything. So I'm going to take 2 right now. So thread count is something which is by default handled by TestNG. So we don't need to create any threads, or don't even worry about creating threads and going into concurrency of Java. It is not at all related right now because TestNG takes care of spanning multiple threads, and it just does everything for us. So right now what we're concerned about is we can just, based on our computer memory available CPU, we can provide number of threads. I'm just providing 2 right now, but we can actually give more also. So I saved it, and let me again right click and run this file, and let's see the output. So right now both test parallel 2 and test parallel 1 test method 1 started. So both started at the same time, and see they finished at the same time, and you can see test parallel 1 already finished, and right now everything is finished. So basically multiple methods started in parallel, right? And they finished at different times. So I'm just gonna run it again because I want you to again pay a little bit attention. And let's run it as here, and these two ones started together. Parallel 1 and parallel 2 test method 1 started together, and then again method 2 also started together, and everything. So basically everything finished right now. But you guys could see that instead of waiting for 6 seconds, it actually started test parallel 2 test method 1, and then it started test parallel 1 test method 1. Now you must be wondering why it did not start the test method 2 of the same class, right? Because it started test method 1 from different classes. The reason is we ran test in parallel. So the test 1, it has TestNG underscore test parallel 1 class. So this started, and in parallel this class started. So it started both the classes in parallel, and whichever method it could run, it ran it. That's how it worked. Now what we can do here is, we can, if I provide this thing as classes, it's almost going to be the same thing because we have both the classes in different tests. So right now let's take a look at methods. What if I do run methods in parallel? So we can see a different output here. So just take a look at the current output right now. Test method 1 started from both the classes, and this one ended, and then test method 2 started from both the classes in parallel, right? Now let's right click, run as TestNG suite, and take a look. Test method 1 and 2 started from the same class, test parallel 1, executed the steps, and then from the same class test method 1 and 2 started. So basically now the methods are running in parallel instead of the classes. Here we can see also, it'll show the result execution once this is done. So parallel 1 TestNG underscore test parallel 1 class is done, and then this class started because this time these two methods started in parallel. So basically we can handle what we want to run in parallel. Either we can run test in parallel or classes in parallel. To run classes in parallel makes sense when we have more than one class here, then it makes sense. So the basic idea is still the same. Whichever thing we want to run in parallel, it will run for us. So it depends on how we want to handle our test cases, whether we want to run different configurations in parallel, or we want to run different classes in parallel, or even different methods in parallel. But you have to be very careful that if we are running in parallel, things can get tricky. You might lose track of the logs. You might not figure out if a method is failed because of some other dependent method. So just be careful. This does not apply to every test suite, but it is still a feature if you have everything independent and if you want to run test configurations in parallel. This is really a very good feature. So that's about it. I'll see you in the next lectures, and thanks for running this one.